In my work with our 200 affiliates across the country, I get to help executive directors and case managers develop and strengthen homelessness prevention programs and shelter diversion programs. And I noticed in two conversations with two affiliates, one in Portland, Maine, and one in Salem, Oregon, that both organizations were really getting creative in finding documentation and getting documentation for families as part of their homelessness prevention efforts. And I was interested in the challenges that families faced and the ways that affiliates were working creatively to support these families. So I wanted to highlight that work. In the article, I first lay out the challenges for families who do not have ID, either having lost it in episodes of housing insecurity or moving across the world or across the country. I talk about the importance of identification for families and documentation for families who are in any type of immigration proceedings, who are looking for a night at a hotel, an emergency shelter, families looking for a new apartment, or trying to access critical social services and benefits. Documentation and ID is necessary to acquire those items. And then I talk briefly about the two Family Promise affiliates and how they've navigated those barriers and help families navigate those barriers and propose some solutions at the community level to make that work a little easier for families. So Family Promise does not do its work alone, and the holistic nature of the work that we do really demands and is strengthened by a community approach. So across our country, we have awesome collaborations at the local level, and in Portland, Maine, the Greater Portland Family Promise team is working with attorneys and legal advocates to help clients as they navigate immigration challenges and housing challenges. And I think that partnership is a great example of that community approach that's needed towards this issue. Families don't have, all families have different challenges and different strengths, and it requires a true collaboration and partnership to get the work done. So if a family is seeking emergency shelter, either in a hotel or through a shelter program, Family Promise or another type of shelter program, documentation is most likely going to be needed in order to secure that shelter. And on the front end, in order to avoid an episode of homelessness or avoid an eviction, federal rent assistance and most state rental assistance programs require documentation in order to provide the resources that do exist but are quite slow to come to families. And then for families, as a family moves from an episode, a crisis situation into planning for long-term sustainability and independence, continued independence, ID and documentation is required to get a car, get a job, get an apartment, get social services and social benefits, and all of those things are critical to helping a family succeed. So I often, when we think about homelessness prevention, especially right now with the conversation around affordable housing and evictions and eviction moratoria, we are often thinking about these very fast and very very visible elements of homelessness prevention. And I wanted to highlight something that at face value seems a little sleepy or bureaucratic, but is this massive, massive, massive key to a family's independence and sustainability moving forward. Every community has had different experiences with COVID. So in the 200 Family Promise affiliate communities, we've seen things ebb and flow. Many affiliates have moved into sheltering in a motel and keeping families in hotel rooms rather than in our traditional congregate shelter model. And in terms of homelessness prevention, COVID has only exacerbated the fragility of so many families across our country. Families who already were living paycheck to paycheck saw fewer work hours, decreased pay, and therefore had to make really difficult decisions. Which bill gets paid? Medicine or rent? Groceries or rent? Tuition or rent? And all of those things have contributed to a massive increase in demand for prevention. Our affiliates have stepped up to that challenge and are working overtime. And one of the key things I want folks to know when they read this article is that even when resources exist, and even when we have a national support system to help renters and help families, which we don't have a perfect system, but we have things in place now, we still need case managers and family advocates to sit next to a family and walk them through what is a very bureaucratic and detailed system. So it's the work of case managers that makes this work possible, and the incredible amount of advocacy and generosity and empathy that they provide to their clients. Whether it's a Family Promise case manager or in another organization, I'm just super inspired by the work that they do.